All right. So once again, welcome to Family First Wednesdays. This month we are sharing our resiliency stories. I'm Beth Ayers. I'm the Family Peer Support Lead for Montana's Peer Network. I also have Kayla Myers here and Jobyna McCarthy with me to also share their stories. Feel free to unmute yourselves or turn on your video if you would like. Again, this is being recorded. So I will have Kayla and Jobyna introduce themselves just really briefly, and then we will jump into our resiliency stories.
My name is Kayla Myers. I am a family care supporter, and I work with Montana Peer Network, and I offer family care support across the state of Montana, but I currently am at the Children's Clinic in Billings, Montana, and I raise a son with autism and nonverbal autism and have my own behavioral health diagnoses as well.
Kayla.
Hey, I'm Jobyna McCarthy. Also go by Joby. If you're a Star Wars fan, Joby-Wan Kenobi. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a family navigator with Montana Family to Family here in Missoula, housed at the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities.
Thank you, guys. I also apparently don't know how to turn off my phone, so I put it in a drawer. All right. Well, I will go first. The point of this Family First Wednesdays webinar is to kind of connect to everybody. And we have found that one of the best ways to connect is to share our lived experience. That is what, for us that do family peer support work, that is really the key to it. And the connections that we get to make through telling our resiliency stories is probably one of the best things that I enjoy in this profession. So, okay, so I have two children. They are now 24 and 19. I have a husband. I live with my 19-year-old and my husband and a dog and a cat. My oldest is out in Seattle, Washington. We've lived here in Billings our whole lives. I had my oldest when I was a single mom. My husband and I got married about the time that my oldest was 3. I really thought that if I did everything right, that everything would turn out okay. And that was kind of the way that I made decisions. It was kind of the way that I raised my children. It was the way I thought the world worked. When it comes to special healthcare needs and behavioral health challenges and just life in general, that is not the way the world works. I soon found out. So my oldest had always been hard to raise and parent. She had a very feisty personality. She was just, the life of the party, all over the place, had tons of friends. But parenting her was always hard for me. And I always felt like maybe I just wasn't doing it right. So I tried every parenting style and parenting plan that there was out there. We did end up having her diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder about first grade. And that seemed to help a lot. But there were just still some parts of her personality that did not serve her very well when it came to getting in trouble or following the school rules or getting along with folks. And Again, even after that ADHD diagnosis, I still just felt like it was a parenting failure on my part. So fast forward, when she was 13, she had been seeing a counselor, and we had found some self-harm photos of her on her phone. So that prompted us to call the counselor. We went in with her. The counselor had prepped us that we might need to take her into the emergency room. So this was the first time I'd ever dealt with any sort of psychiatric care beyond a counselor, beyond my own personal psychiatrist. I hadn't ever been in the psychiatric facilities or the psychiatric world, especially with youth. I was really hoping that we could just take care of things in the counseling office, and that's not how it happened. We ended up taking her to the hospital, into the emergency room. And from that point on, it was just kind of a blur, I would say. Thankfully, we had the counselor with us. I don't know what we would have done without that. I think we would have been too afraid to even take her to the ER. I grew up in a home where problems were only problems if you talked about them. So, if you don't take them to, get help, then there's no problem and everything's okay. And so I'm sure we would have just taken her home and hoped that it all turned out okay later. But thankfully, we had somebody there who was encouraging us to treat her behavioral health, her self-harm as a physical problem, physical illness. And if it had been anything else, if we had been worried about her heart or her lungs, we would have not thought twice about taking her into the hospital. So thankfully, he was there to just kind of encourage us to keep going with the process. I don't really remember anything about it. I remember a lot of crying. I remember looking at people like, somebody please just tell me what to do. And my husband was there with us. And he felt kind of the same way. I'm sure there was a lot of information given to us. I don't remember any of that. I remember just through the whole process, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what was supposed to happen, and always questioning if I was doing the right thing through the whole thing. And I would assume probably years later, I still question myself, as a mom, whether we did the right thing throughout all those years. So what it's like having a child go into inpatient psychiatric care is you walk out of the ER by yourself or with whoever you came with, not your child, with a piece of paper that says you consent for them to admit your child. And you're told you'll get a call the following day from the case manager, and that's it. And it was the loneliest, hardest point of time in my life. I remember coming home, crying a lot, calling people. I think the other hard part of it too was trying to be very careful of who I called. Again, had it been a physical illness, everybody probably would have known. But when it came to behavioral health, it was just harder. It was harder to tell people. It was harder to talk about it. So I called a few close friends. So that was our first experience with the ER and the psychiatric inpatient hospital station. Over the next couple of years, we had multiple inpatient hospital stays. Not we, my daughter had multiple inpatient hospital stays, psychiatric visits, psychiatrists, counseling, family counseling, marriage counseling. And I think everybody had a counselor. I was really thinking we should just combine everybody, because it seemed ridiculous to have, 8 different counselors for all the different things. But it was a lot of appointments. It was a lot of medication. It was a lot of words and language that I didn't understand. And I think the hardest, like throughout all of it, I wasn't familiar with the hospital system. I wasn't familiar with the psychiatric system. And I really just didn't understand what was happening. I really felt like we were just thrown into a world that we didn't know, that we had no experience in. And I really couldn't see anyone else in my life who had had that experience. So I really just felt like we were going through it blind. We were having to make all these choices and all these decisions with information that I didn't know. And then just as a family member, as a parent, just being afraid, feeling, I guess all the feelings you could feel. I was devastated. There was a lot of grief because that's just not how you think things are going to turn out for your family and for your children. There was a lot of fear. There's a lot of anger and judgment, a lot of frustration. I think it's hard enough to see people hurt and see people that struggle, but when you're their parent, I think there's a part of frustration in it because you feel, at least I felt like I should be able to control this, and so you have to like parent within the illness, which was very challenging for me. And just, feeling very isolated through it all. I remember feeling like I was always one step behind. I remember feeling like, well, if I had known, back then what I knew today, I would have made a totally different decision. I heard somebody say that experience is something you get right after you really need it, which was so true. And so kind of through that whole process, I just remember reaching out to anyone and everyone that I could, and just trying to find people that could help me through it, that could tell me, what were the right questions to ask? What did this mean? What did that mean? It ended with residential treatment for 6 months. At that point, her health really started to improve. She was able to graduate high school. She was able to move out on her own. Things are going well for her. And that's kind of what I think prompted me to want to be a family peer supporter, was just wanting somebody that I want to be the person that I wish I had when I was walking through all of that. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. My second child also developed behavioral health challenges later on in life. And I would have thought, having gone through it before, having been in this profession, I would handle it differently, but I don't. I still blame myself. I still wish things were different. I know that there's hope and that everybody, that we can have a good life regardless. But some days I still don't believe it. The behavioral health system is still very frustrating and very broken. I always find it interesting that I can navigate the behavioral health system for somebody else just fine. But when it comes to my own children, it is exhausting and emotional. And I don't know why it's so different. I guess you just have more skin in the game when it's your own children. But so my biggest hope from kind of all of this is that our behavioral health system will change. I hope that people look at behavioral health the same way that we look at physical health. And I hope we really start looking at people as individuals, and not as, you have children, they grow up, they go to school, they graduate high school, they go to college, they get married, they have kids, like all of those things that for whatever reason, society has told us like, this is what it looks like. I have met very few people that that's what it looks like for them. And I have met a lot of people where it looks the complete opposite, and it's hard. So, yeah, I have a passion today to walk alongside folks, to be with them, to support them emotionally, and to hopefully give them hope that they can take care of themselves and they can take care of their children. And at the end of the day, there is hope. And I think one of the most important things for me as a parent is to take good care of myself, because I'm really no good to my children or my family if I don't. And that's very counterintuitive for us as parents, I think. So, yeah, so thank you guys for letting me share. I will turn it over to whichever the other ladies wants to go next.
Go ahead, Kayla. I gotta fix my window real quick.
All right. Well, that's going to be a hard act to follow, but thank you, Beth, for sharing your story and being vulnerable with all of us. So I wanted to start off with, I have notes, so don't mind my looking down or looking over at them. I can kind of be I can just keep talking and talking and talking with no end. So I have to give myself some talking notes. So I wanted to start us off with an affirmation that I picked up on my mental health recovery journey. And it was, I am doing the best job that I know how to with the tools that I've been given. So I wanted to thank you guys all for being here and hearing our stories. My name is Kayla, and I'm a mom to 2 amazing boys and a bonus to a sweet girl. I have the pleasure of working at Montana Peer Network, and I offer family peer support at the Children's Clinic in Billings. I have a amazing boyfriend, and my parents grew up in Montana, but they moved to Nevada for teaching jobs. So I was born and raised in like the northern Nevada area. When I had kids, Easton was born in Seattle, then Bryce was born in California, and then made our way to Montana. And happy to be here, surrounded by familiar places and people and faces, and having that support system has been really nice. So yeah, as I share my resiliency story with you guys today, my goal is to offer a fellow peer who is raising a child with complex care needs a piece of connection and a place where they're understood and validated. So my youngest, Bryce, has always been, I always call him my Sour Patch Kid. First he's sour, then he's sweet. He's always given me, sorry, I'm nervous all of a sudden. He's always given me a run for my money in different ways than Easton, my oldest. So Easton was just wild and full of life, and like more, not taming him, but keeping him safe while he could be, the wild little boy that he was. Bryce was different. He was born and he was just really, really sweet, and he just was, yeah, like he could be really sour, and then he was like just a little love bug. And yeah, they were very, very different from one another. I think a lot of parents find that. And so when Bryce was little, his needs were more like medical needs. So he had a set of tubes by the time he was 9 months old. He was hospitalized with bronchiolitis at 6 months old. So it was just like always that stuff, just like ears, lungs, he's sick. Like he just always just worried me. And then fast forward, knowing what I know now, I wasn't even prepared for what was ahead. The stuff with the ears and the sickness, that was easy compared to right around 2.5. Bryce just started, he just started to change like right before my eyes, the kid that I feel like Bryce was there one day and like his body was still there, but he kind of morphed into a totally different human being. Um, all the words that he knew were gone. He didn't interact with anyone anymore besides me. He just seemed really like, yeah, stuck in his own head and kind of in his own world. And that was not the Bryce that I had had up until that point. So he was in speech and OT, but I felt the information that I was being given by the owners of that therapy clinic was very insensitive and kind of out of line. Wasn't really their place to just come out and, I would ask them questions, but like just their like coldness to the situation when to me, it felt, it was my life at that point. It was Bryce's life. And I just felt like they were, yeah, I guess I don't know how to describe it. Very cold and very, insensitive in the way that they were like, well, maybe it's apraxia, maybe he's autistic. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what do you mean? Like those words felt really big and really heavy to me when I was just asking, like, why is he not talking? To me, it should have been something so simple that, you're the speech therapist, like, why can't, it doesn't mean that he has something that's like so complex. And I just felt really alone and isolated and, terrified and scared. All of the things. And, so I had to kind of set out and figure it out on my own because I didn't like the feedback that I was being given. I was going to go find the answers for Bryce and myself, and not be told by people that, you know, had worked with him for a short amount of time and tell me his mom that knows him, what's happening with him. So, I contacted ECI myself, and this is where the beacon of light came in for me, because the two women that I was introduced to within the ECI organization were also moms to children with special healthcare needs. And so that's where I really got, now knowing the position that I'm in doing family care support, now I know like what that felt like to receive at that time when I was just, I like had a facade that I was holding it all together. And, I thought that I was doing what I was supposed to do and not asking for what I needed also, but just like Bryce needs me. And I dove in, and it was really nice to just get that. Yes, they were there advocating for Bryce, but they were also advocating that my needs and my feelings were also important, and that it's okay to talk about the things that are hard. And even though there are kids and we don't want to talk, not that we're talking badly about them and what is happening, it's just, I don't think it's what any of us pictured when you have a child with complex care needs. I don't think it's the life that you envision for them, because you know that the layers of challenges and heartache and pain that it's going to add is not what you want for yourself or your child. And I think it's really good, to acknowledge that, because I think a lot of us feel like that when these diagnoses are handed over on a black and white sheet of paper. It can feel very big. So he was later diagnosed with autism, and he is nonverbal. And I don't want to sugarcoat our journey. It was really, really hard, but I don't feel like I felt that stuff until later. I didn't let myself process the hard stuff until later. I kind of, like Beth said earlier, I kind of don't remember a lot of what my needs and wants and asks were at that time. It was just about Bryce. I just dove into being the best mom and advocate that I could be for him. So yeah, I did all the maybe if I would have read one more book to him, or or maybe if I wouldn't have let him watch, this TV show, or maybe he wasn't on the iPad, or, like all those things, or maybe if I would have fed him all organic foods, like my friend does on, like my social media moms, not that they're doing anything wrong either. I'm just saying, like, maybe if I would have been more to Bryce, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So, and then I remember people asking me questions all the time. So do they think that he'll ever talk? Or, do you think it was the vaccines that he got around that age? Do you think, do you know why this happened? Have they given you any answers? And, sometimes I just wanted to, like, not scream at them, but just scream, like, I'm just as far along in this journey as you are. I am right there with you. Like, will he ever talk? I don't know. I can't predict the future. So I remember that feeling, just, once again, the facade that you have to put on and be brave and strong for them. But it's, it's also something that like, I was just as far along in the process as everyone else. And I'm his mom, and I felt like that was very defeating as being a parent to him. I was supposed to know what was going on. I was supposed to be his protector. And I just really felt like I had failed. While I wish it wasn't something that was affecting him and affecting me, it was. And while I wish every day that I could hear my son's, that I could hear his thoughts and his worries and his scares and the things that he needs, I have to make a constant effort every day to find the good. To find the good in the challenges that have been presented to us. I'm gonna get it together. So through my time raising Bryce, I have found that meeting him where he is and not where society or I believe he should be has given me more joy than I could ever have imagined. He sees the world very differently than most, and he makes me stop and appreciate the things that I probably would skip over every single day. He finds amusement in the small things that we all take for granted. Being Bryce's mom has changed me for the better. I feel confident in speaking up and advocating for his needs and mine. I have learned that life is what you make of it. And who am I to say that Bryce has a less of a life than anyone else? He's fine just the way he is. He's always living his best life, is what I say. And he only craves the simplicity, the simplistic things in life. I envy that about him. He moves through his life not expecting anything but the most basic needs that all of us need. He finds value in the things that humans take for granted every day. And he loves people deeply, or he loves deeply for those that stop long enough to hear the ways he does communicate without the words. Bryce is my hero. So thank you guys for listening to my story. I'm sorry I got a little emotional, but I appreciate you guys all being here.
Jobyna, thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Jobyna.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm gonna have to take a little breath there for a minute. Boy, we sure are tough when we gotta be. And so again, my name is Jobyna, or Joby McCarthy. I'm 47 years old, a white female, shoulder length brown hair. Today I'm wearing a black shirt. Behind me, my background, I have some artwork and my plants. So I was born in Butte, America. I lived there for half of my life, and the second half of my life here in Missoula. I'm a family navigator with Montana Family to Family at the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities. So I'm here today to talk about my preemies, and I would love to give a caution here that it's a story of loss, and I encourage you to take care of yourself, take a break if you need. I will totally understand. So I gave birth to two preemies. My second preemie, Quinn, is now 17. And my angel baby, Tyler, was born and lost in 1994. So if you're good with math, you're thinking, you were young, and it was. I was 17. I had just graduated from high school, was ready to go off to college on a softball scholarship. I was a super fit athlete. I had an irregular period. And then my jeans were starting to get tight. And then my mom asked, you pregnant? You know, because moms always know. And even though I was in denial or I didn't know what was going on anyway, and I was bleeding all the time anyway, I just thought that was a period. She was right. An ultrasound confirmed the next day that I was 5 to 6 months along. And they said, you know, you certainly need to see a doctor immediately. But it was too late. The next day I went into labor, and although they were pumping me full of the medications to slow and stop my labor, it was just too late. Tyler was born at 1 pound, 5 ounces. And the United States at that time had just received FDA approval to use surfactant in premature babies for their lungs. But in Butte, we either didn't have access to it yet, or the choice was made to not use it, or there just wasn't enough time. I don't know. But without the surfactant, the alveoli in Tyler's lungs simply couldn't inflate, and he perished quickly after birth. Because I was still a teenager, poised to fly off to college and into adulthood, this loss was treated by everyone around me that it was for the best. And I had my whole life ahead of me. And my favorite, God knew what I needed. But I also was receiving messages from society sharing the sentiment of shame of unmarried teen pregnancy. So after the small family graveside services, I was sent off to college alone, with less than a month to heal from this trauma. You know, completely alone. Of course, I was referred to the grieving moms groups of infant loss, but there were no teenagers in there. And I was still a child, and also in this country, in this culture, we don't talk about death, whether it's if we're afraid of it, or we don't know how to talk about it, or if we talk about it, then we're bringing up awful memory, you know, those kind of things. You know, even to this day, almost 30 years later, I still grieve alone. Nobody ever remembers or cares to speak of, you know, the anniversary day, the birthday. But it wasn't until recently, honestly, that I was speaking with a newer, trusted, beautiful human. And she was hearing my woes, and she's also a person that has experienced a great deal of loss, not particularly infant loss, but many losses nonetheless. And I was talking about how I had just been forgotten and dismissed, and how every single year that week, I just dread it because I know everybody's going to forget it and ignore me. She suggested that I just take a mini vacation during that time, that either alone or with, you know, another trusted person or people, to celebrate his life and to grieve the memories that I will never get to create with Tyler, to grieve the dismissal of my family and friends that Tyler ever even existed. But to make that day and that week exactly how I wanted, that was an absolute light bulb moment. Like, I get to dictate how I grieve. It's so empowering. So now that, that I used to dread Tyler's anniversary, now I get to look forward to that special week. Regarding healing and resiliency and general wellness, I cannot say enough about how helpful therapy was. I've done a great deal of talk therapy with all the different modalities of EMDR and all the acronyms. And they've done a great deal of good work, of course, just working through the loss of losing an infant and then, being dismissed by family and friends, but further untangling that shame of the stigma that only bad teenagers get pregnant. Shame helps no one. My teenage self, I deserve love and understanding. I deserve healthcare, physical and mental health care, instead of being judged and discarded. Also around that resiliency and that wellness, I've created these communities around myself of joy, around my art, my softball friends, dancing. I have created a beautiful community of friends that do talk about Tyler, that do want to hear about Tyler. So, sometimes you're the only person that can create, that can help, that can heal, and you have to keep seeking that self-care. But other times sharing with a trusted human that even if they haven't been through exactly what you've been through, like my friend, can give you, the breakthrough that you need. Again, there's no shame in pregnancy and unmarried pregnancy. Humans are capable, we know this, of procreating at young ages, and it happens. And instead of just shaming them, maybe education, maybe prevention, maybe not casting stones and turning our backs on them. It's just, shame is not an effective public health tool. It just doesn't work. It destroys. So my goal in sharing these preemie stories with you is that, we can reduce the stigma. We can help teenagers that have become pregnant, or help them not become pregnant if they don't want to. It's just deeply damaging to our psyche. And, then we get overwhelmed and we won't reach out in healthy ways. And for a decade after Tyler was born, I was drowning in shame. And I was using alcohol to drown that shame. And again, it wasn't healthy for me, and it certainly isn't healthy for society. Yes, thank you, Shauna. Should we put that on a t-shirt? Shame is not an effective public health tool. Yeah, so today, I have 17 years ago, I had another preemie. Quinn was born at 28 weeks, 2 pounds, 10 ounces. He was given the surfactant that wasn't available to Tyler, and was able to breathe on his own shortly after birth. He had a few surgeries in his 58-day NICU stay. Of course, as preemies do, they forget to breathe and they turn blue and then they get resuscitated, which comes with its own section of therapy that you need to deal with. But he graduated from the NICU. He's a junior in high school. He's taller than I am, and he has dreams of going to medical school. So I really appreciate you all being here to listen to these stories and to understand and help me reduce that stigma. Thanks, loves.
Thank you, Joby. Thank you, Kayla. I am definitely glad I went first, because it got harder as it went on. So I just want to open it up now to anybody who has any questions, anybody that wants to share maybe some of their own. Nobody has to. We just wanted to kind of open it up and give the opportunity to everybody else too.
I would say, I would just chime in that I spent a lot of, my son has severe autism and is non-speaking and physically aggressive. And I spent a lot of time grieving the isolation and the loss of family members I expected to stand by, and definitely friends. Like, if you can't fit in with the norm, if you can't have conversations about how you're, kindergartner or not, if I hold him back, he might get bored. But if he got, these conversations that felt like nonsense to me. Um, and then later I talked to a friend who has a son with really complex medical needs. And she said, Shauna, people don't like to be sad or be confronted with sadness or things that feel like they can't help in any way. So they don't stay. Like if you share too deeply. And so that was eye-opening for me. And it's been like interesting ever since, trying to navigate what relationships can I really share, what's important in my life and what's happening, and what relationships do I relegate to, it's never going to get past this shallow level with this person, and I have to let it be that way. I don't know. It's been an interesting balance. Like I think it, like Jobyna said, taking it upon yourself to find ways to heal. And for me, part of that was taking it upon myself to figure out who could be in it with me and who can't. And I just have to accept that they just don't have it in them and not be bitter and, ticked off about that and pursue it in weird ways. 'Cause they can't walk it with you. But it's isolating, it's lonely.
Shauna. I can definitely relate to all of the, normal conversations and just kind of what everybody's focused on. And yeah.
Sometimes folks don't know as well, don't understand what they've done to hurt. And there are certain people that can hear that, as in like, that one time that I was saying, I was talking about Tyler, and my grandmother cut me off and said, oh yeah, it's so-and-so's, babies, our aunt also lost a baby. It's her birthday too, or, like, I know. And I just needed to talk about Tyler for a minute. She's like, oh, I know. So, sometimes they don't know what they've done to be harmful. And there are some people that you can gently say, that hurt.
I don't, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this, so I missed the introductions, but along those lines, I try to remember that I used to say really stupid things before I experienced it too. So as an example, I have two sets of twins. Actually, they're two 14-year-olds and two 16-year-olds now. And the massive amounts of stupid questions we were asked their entire lives, like we couldn't go to the grocery store without getting stopped. My husband and I used to split up so that people wouldn't stop and ask us or tell us everything they knew about twins already. Like I have to remember though that they used to fascinate me too. I used to ask, the one that we always laughed at was when somebody asked if you had paternal twins, and we're like, yes, they have fathers, but the term you're looking for is fraternal. So that's a classic. But also, then I was widowed 8 years ago. And I don't know if I'm not going to share my whole story, but I had 7 children. I was widowed and had 7 daughters. And so also some of the same things Jobyna was saying, like I was 33 years old and all the widow communities are women that are 60 and older. But we say really, really dumb things to people when they're grieving as well. So you just have to remember, like, you can't punch people in the face when they ask, like, just call me if you need anything. So that's, but thank you everybody for sharing your stories, because I'm actually here for after all those 7 kids. I remarried and I have a son whom we adopted at birth, but we have some, we believe fetal alcohol syndrome. So he has very aggressive behaviors, but he's also very gifted. Like he's a first grader reading at like a third grade level, things like that. But he's a wildly almost impossible to help control. We're on like 3 doses of Ritalin a day to try to make it through a day. So I'm just really here because I met Beth and Helena, and I just want to have a community. So thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you, Brianna.
This is Jen. And Jobyna knows that I also lost a baby. And one of the things I've found with people is that they say things that try to make themselves feel better or make themselves feel like it won't happen to them. So people said things to me like, I bet you wish you had taken prenatal vitamins. And it's like, well, I did, right? And it's so hard in those moments, right, to say back to them that kind of thing. Oh, do you think that taking prenatal vitamins prevents like premature births and infant death? Like, where's the research on that, right? And I've had so many experiences like that where people will say to me, well, I'm glad that whatever thing it is. And when I'm not in that moment, I'm able to remind myself that they're really talking about what they believe are their protective factors, rather than the things that I did or didn't do. But when we're in grief, that's not that's not a helpful thing to say at all.
Jen.
Again, and I think this goes along with what Kayla was saying earlier too, that people always, so what was helpful for us, because my daughters and I actually quit going out into public in our small town, and we started going to Miles City, to Montana, and our big thing we would do is go to movies because nobody can talk to you there. Like nobody's going to come up and ask you lots of questions about your dad's death when you're at the movie theater. So what helped us was being told like the idea that you're confronted with your grief 100% of the time. Like you're dealing with it, you're actively working through it. And people in your community who, like, we're from Jordan, we were from Jordan, Montana. So everybody knows everybody. My late husband was related to everybody. So when people see you in the grocery store, that's when they're confronted with their grief. And they haven't been talking about it all the time. So when they see you, they want to talk about it. And so just kind of that, like, that's how they're processing, because they see you, they remember, they want to talk to you and his children. And even though you're like, I've been thinking about this all day and I do not want to talk to you about it, I'm going to a different town to get my groceries. But so just also to give people grace later, like Jennifer was just saying, like later, you can remember that, and always remember, like, I too once was an idiot. So
Yeah.
No, I think at the time it was just like more of the facade that I was like already carrying around within my own unhealed versions of my reality. Not just with Bryce, like my own mental health at the time as well. And so I think that was just what I knew would protect me. It was a coping mechanism that if I like help, like everyone always is like, you always are so strong and you always look like you just know what you're doing. I have zero idea of what I was doing. I mean, I don't even remember. Apparently I looked strong and capable and like I was doing really well, but I didn't, feel any of those things. And I almost felt, it was more of a defensive, like I was defensive because when they would say those things, I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I hope they hope so, or I hope so, or, but then I would just be like, oh my God, is he going to, it was just all these like defenses and like, am I showing people that I'm like scared to be Bryce's mom? It's just like all my own insecurities and like all the reflecting and stuff that I've done back to it. I think the biggest takeaway, for me was just that like I was just as long, like it's also giving myself grace within that. I was just as far along in the process as they were with understanding what was happening to Bryce. And like my reflecting back is that like I should have been offered grace, and I should have been offering myself grace because that's a complex thing to be going through. And so but yeah, no, there's many times that I look back and I'm like you said, in my teens or in high school or in college, that I said the stupidest, like, I'm never going to let my kids like sleep in my bed, or like people who put kids on leashes are like, that is wrong. And there's many times I put Bryce on it, like I put on his backpack and I'm like, I would rather have my child alive than dead. So people want to look at me. So like, there's also been a lot of things that I beat in my own words many, many times. Kids really humble you. They really do.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Thank you, Kayla. Well, I think one of the things that I pulled from this is just that it's really all of our jobs to fight against that stigma, whether that's behavioral health or teen moms or, you know, our children with any sort of special health care needs. And the reality that I don't know who out there has a normal life, because nobody on this call has had a normal life. And so I think once we talk and once we share how important that is, especially to folks that can relate or like you guys that can appreciate it and really look to hold each other up through it and to offer each other grace. So I want to thank everybody for being here. We do have on mtpeernetwork.org a free family membership. If you haven't signed up, that's what gets you on these email lists. And then also our hope in it is to connect folks like us across Montana so that we don't have to continue doing this by ourselves, and so that there is hope and there is connection and community between us. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Jobyna and Kayla, for sharing your stories and being so vulnerable with us. I appreciate you guys a lot, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you all.
Thank you all for sharing.